Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Motorsport Diaries. I hope you're having a great day. Today, we were doing my F1 2023 Wrapped. Like always, let me know what you're drinking during the podcast episode. Right now, I'm literally having coffee because I'm so exhausted, but I need to do this episode for you guys. And also, I worked so hard on this 2023 F1 Wrapped that I needed to show you guys. So I'm grinding it out and drinking some coffee. So let me know what you're drinking or eating while you're watching this episode, and let's get into it. First on my F1 23 Wrapped is my race recap. We have 21 races watched, 1 race attended, and 154 tears shed. I watched 21 races out of 22 this season. I only missed Bahrain because my coach was a pain in my ass and decided to put our practice on that Saturday and Sunday of the F1 weekend for Bahrain, and I was literally so upset. It was literally the first race of the 2023 season, and I waited like 3 months for F1 winter break. So excited. And then my coach is like, yeah, no, you're going to have training literally during the 2 hours of the race. Maybe it was a good thing though because it was a Charles DNF, so at least I didn't have to see it live. And then I attended one race. It wasn't F1, it was Nashville IndyCar, but this F1 recap is also like a motorsport recap because I'm also a very big fan of IndyCar. So I did actually end up going to an IndyCar race in Nashville over the summer. I was literally so happy. Such an amazing experience. I think everybody should experience an IndyCar race. It's super fun. I went with like my best friend from TikTok. Her name is Mia. It was such a fun time. Yeah, I'm actually planning to go again next year, like 100%. Super, super fun. I loved it. And 154 tears shed. I probably shed more than 154, but yeah. This season had so many DNFs and so many chaotic races for my favorite drivers that I was crying a lot. Next is my favorite driver this season, George Russell, Mercedes AMG F1. I think literally everybody knows this. I am a diehard Brussels sprout. I am such a big George Russell fan. A lot of people always ask me, like, why are you a George Russell fan? It's kind of random. It's so hard to explain. I mean, I've always said I have this theory that, like, your favorite driver almost chooses you. Like, you might start out being a super big fan of a driver, but I think your true favorite driver will just kind of sneak up on you. I think it depends, like, if you're from a certain country and you want to support a driver because they have, like, the same nationality as you, that's, one thing. But yeah, I think George, for me, he's just a driver that I really resonate with a lot, and I think he's just really cool. But here are the reasons that I put on my F1 23 Wraps for why George Russell is my favorite driver. I put that he's British as fuck. He is a constant meme, driven, kind hearted, and really funny, even though nobody else thinks so. Yeah, I don't know. I think he is very driven and I love his mentality. I think he's hilarious. I think I kind of see myself in him, not to like toot my own horn, but I don't know. I think his sense of humor, like I resonate with it a lot and I really just love him. I don't really have a lot more else to say on why I love George Russell. I think everybody knows I love George Russell. And I don't think that's going to change next season. I think in my 2024 F1 Wrapped, it'll still be my favorite driver, George Russell, but yeah. Now, my second favorite driver this season for my F1 2023 Wrapped, I think a lot of people were surprised by this. I kind of was as well, but I think Alex Albon being my second favorite driver, it makes sense, and I stand by it. I think he's just one of those drivers that like everybody loves, everybody supports. Yeah, and I think this season he just really resonated with me, and I really liked seeing him outperform that shitbox of a Williams. It was really impressive, and I can't wait to see what he does next year. I think he's just a kind-hearted, kind-spirited driver. Here are the reasons though that I put on my F1 23 apps. I said he makes weird noises. Baby girl carried Williams on his back and underdog. So I think, yeah, the underdog mentality really hits for me. Like, if there are F1 drivers who are like the underdog or kind of like come back and prove people wrong, I love it. I love it. It's one of my favorite things about some F1 drivers, and I will definitely root for the underdogs. So, yeah, Alex being my second favorite driver this season. Next, I have my favorite driver honorable mentions. These are drivers that I love and support, and they are kind of my favorite drivers, but they're not like my top two favorite drivers. And here they are. We have Joseph Newgarden, Oscar Piastri, and Logan Sargent. So, if you don't know, like I said earlier, I love IndyCar. I recently got into it, I think 6 months ago, which is kind of crazy. It's been 6 months, but I really love IndyCar, and he was one of my favorite drivers since the beginning. I just love Bus Bros. They are so funny, and he's obviously a part of Bus Bros. And he's just such a down to earth type of guy. He is so driven. He works super hard. he's kind of like Charles Leclerc in my opinion, in the sense that like he always blames himself for things that happen. I don't know, but here are the reasons why he made my list. He's my favorite IndyCar driver, Indy 500 winner, number one DILF, and so funny because he literally is a number one DILF. Joseph Newgarden is an underrated number one DILF. He is so attractive, and I mean this objectively. I literally saw him in IndyCar at Nashville in an IndyCar race. First time I ever saw him, and I thought he was at least like 25, 26. He looked like he was 25, 26. He's like 31 or 32. I was shocked. He looks so young. He looks so good for his age. When he's like 60, he's going to be looking like he's 30. Incredible. I award him. I do. Next on my list for favorite driver honorable mentions, we have Oscar Piastri. I'm not surprised by this. I don't think anybody's surprised by this. I love Oscar. I've been supporting him since his Prema days, his F2 days. My reasons were number one rookie, literally a koala, supporting since F2, and baby girl. Yeah, I think he's so unproblematic. He could do no wrong. He's so talented, and I'm literally so excited to see what he does in the McLaren next season. I hope that the McLaren is really good so that he can actually like really challenge. But even considering what he's done this season, so good. Like he was so close to his teammate. He got two podiums, a sprint race win. So impressive. Yeah, honestly, I love him. He's so great. So I almost said slay. Slay. And then this is actually very surprising. I didn't think Logan Sargent was going to make my list, but it just kind of hit me randomly. And I was like, you know what? He Loki is one of my favorite drivers. I'm starting to actually cheer for him and root for him and like want him to succeed on race day. And in my eyes, that means that you're one of my favorites. My reasons for why he's one of my favorites. We have never thought I'd be a Logan fan, but here I am, which is true. Underdog, he's trying his hardest, and wholesome shy baby girl. Cause he just gives the vibes. He is so wholesome and shy. And if you see him in interviews and in the Williams videos, he's just kind of like, I don't know, and even on the driver parade, he kind of just stays to himself. And I love him so much. I think he's so. I just want him to do well. I do. It's one of those drivers that you just can't help but root for, especially considering how bad of a season he had. And the thing is, I don't really know why it is that if a shy, likable driver has a shit season, you almost want to root for them. You want them to do well. I don't know if that's everybody, but that's how I feel. So yeah, that's why Logan Sargent is on this list. So that's kind of my favorite driver honorable mentions list. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know who your guys' favorite drivers are. I'm curious. What do you guys think about my list? Next on my F123 Wrapped, we have my favorite duo. So my favorite duo this season has got to go to Alex and Logan, the Williams duo. This is honestly shocking, and it kind of came out of nowhere, but they are so charismatic together. If you guys ever see their videos they do together or just like their moments, it's just so wholesome and cute, and it's giving Fearless by Taylor Swift. It's so fearless vibes, and I love them so much. I think that they're really fun together, and I think Alex kind of relaxes Logan and kind of brings out a side of Logan that we don't see often, and I really love it. Yeah, I think they're a great duo. Here are the reasons though that I wrote down why they're my favorite duo. We have wholesome as fuck. Alex constantly bullying Logan, which is true. There was literally a clip that was so funny in their recent video where Alex was like, "Oh, have you had tea before?" And Logan was like, "Shut up, mate." It was so funny. Like they're so funny together. America x British Slay. It's like the America slash British duo, and I love that. Also, I relate to it. I relate to it on a personal level. That's literally how I am with my best friend in the UK. It's so funny. And all around good vibes and so funny. They honestly are. Like they're such good vibes together. They are, and it's just yeah, I love them. They slay. Next on F123 Wrapped, we have my favorite duo honorable mentions. Now, these duos are honestly like my favorites, and I love Alex and Logan, but they're kind of all on the same level. I love these duos. They're amazing. The first one we have is Brit Sadies. If you know me, you know I'm a Mercedes girl. I love me some Brit Sadies. And the reason that I put for them is that literally besties, Lewis just doesn't know. Because I feel like the Brit Sadies vibes are literally just George being a Lewis Hamilton fangirl and Lewis just kind of being there. And I think it's so funny. I think a lot of people talk smack about like the George and Lewis dynamic, and they make it seem like George has no respect for Lewis. George isn't like Lewis. I'm like, what are you talking about? George is the Lewis Hamilton fangirl. George Russell is the leader of the Lewis Hamilton fangirl nation. Do you not remember his iconic tweet from Abu Dhabi 2021 in all caps screaming, "This is unacceptable"? Next on my list of honorable mentions, we have Verstappen. If you know me, you know I love Verstappen. I love Charles and Max. I think that their duo is really cool and unique. And I just love this whole kind of like rival team, but friends and tension of, you know, knowing each other since childhood and karting days and hating each other and then becoming friends. And then the whole Austria 2019 situation and Charles and following Max on the plane, you know, that whole lore. And it's super interesting. And I think that their duo is fun, especially in 2023. 2023 was Verstappen's year. 2023, I didn't know that we could get better than 2022, yet here we are. The amount of stuff that has happened this season, like literally the fact that Charles and Max played paddle together and had a photo evidence that they were actually hanging out on the off season, that was crazy. 2019, Charles and Max would probably be like in shock by that, and rightfully so. I was shocked. Literally, my reason that I had for why they are in my honorable mentions, I literally put this was literally their year. Even F1 admin is on board. F1 admin was like kind of not really passing the vibe check, but they were literally tweeting about it, so that's kind of crazy. They have to be on this list. Next, honorable mention dynamic duo that I loved, Bus Bros. A lot of you guys probably don't know what Bus Bros is. They're basically an IndyCar podcast where there's Joseph Newgarden and Scott McLaughlin, two Penske drivers in IndyCar. They are so funny and so comforting. It's such an amazing podcast. I love listening to their episodes and like watching them. If you like The Office and you like that type of style for podcasts and media, you will love Bus Bros. It is so funny and just unintentionally funny. I think that they're both really funny guys and it's just hilarious. I love it so much. You guys have to watch it. It fucking cracks me up. Also, you can kind of learn a lot about IndyCar through it. I mean, they talk a lot about IndyCar and they talk about themselves in IndyCar, and they also interview a lot of IndyCar drivers, which I love, and I think that that definitely helps learn IndyCar lore and learn about other drivers. So if you're trying to get into IndyCar, I totally recommend watching Bus Bros for sure. The reasons that I put on my slides though are Owned Me in July because they did. I was obsessed with them when I first started getting into IndyCar in July. And then funniest IndyCar duo and Joseph Stan because I love Joseph Newgarden. And then my last honorable mention dynamic duo is the 2019 rookies. I know that's not a duo, but in my eyes, I'm just gonna do. I'm using that because I wanted to put George and Alex, and at that point, I might as well just throw Lando into the mix and make it 2019 rookies. I love 2019 rookies. I think they're probably my favorite dynamic and favorite kind of group, I guess you could say, like triplet in F1, and they're great. They're funny. We all love them. The reasons that I put for this were I know they aren't a duo, but they are too good to not mention. And then Alex and George duo. Yeah. Especially their Zandvoort video this year. It was so funny. And I just love the fact that they're all kind of still BFFs. They're still vibing together and they still hang out. And hopefully they do a Twitch stream together soon because I'm kind of missing that. Yeah, I obviously love them. I think literally everybody loves them. So yeah, that's why they're on the list. So next on F123 Wrapped, we have my favorite race of 2023, and that is Barcelona. Is it because it was the only Mercedes 2-3, the only Mercedes joint podium? Maybe. But honestly, this race in general was really good. I kind of forgot about it because it happened earlier in the season, you know? And I totally forgot about the actual race, but I was kind of rewatching recaps and videos on it. And even like the overtakes during the race were so sexy and beautiful. Like there was so much overtaking. There was a lot that was going on. It was a really interesting race. And obviously we love a Mercedes 2-3. And yeah, we love when Mercedes does well. Considering how bad Mercedes did this season, yeah, it was just so good. I wish there were more Mercedes podiums this year, but it's fine. Yeah, this race is honestly so great. Yeah, that's really all I have to say about that. It was a good race. Next are my favorite race honorable mentions. So first we have Monza. I think Monza, I put it as one of my favorite races of the season because it was just really good vibes all around. I think the atmosphere at Monza is always incredible. It never disappoints. The Tifosi are insane. I literally love them. And I think Carlos being on pole and Carlos being on the podium, the whole weekend was just such immaculate vibes and it was really cool to watch. Also, I think a lot of people forgot about how good Monza actually was of a race because if you don't remember, on the last couple laps, Charles and Carlos were fighting it out for P3 because Charles was behind him. And it was really intense. I thought one of them was going to crash into the other at one point. Like, I was scared. But it was incredible racing. And even Charles said afterwards, he was like, oh, yeah, I had so much fun. It was so fun. Even though he almost took both of them out, but whatever. I digress. But yeah, it was a really great race. I loved seeing the Charles and Carlos battling at the end. It was just super interesting, kept me on your toes. I loved it. Also, that really iconic George quote comes from this race where he was like, I don't know if you can see, but I have a car right up my ass. That was so priceless. George's radio messages this season did not disappoint. He was king of radio messages. So funny. You knew that whenever you saw the GR, like the George radio pop up come up on your screen, it was going to be something hilarious. And it was. So, yeah, Monza is definitely one of my favorite races of this season. Next on my favorite race of the season, we have Qatar. I think Qatar is kind of unpopular opinion. I think a lot of people didn't like this race. I think that like the safety aspects definitely tainted the view of Qatar for a lot of people, which I totally understand. And I think, yeah, seeing a lot of the drivers struggle was really hard for people, including myself. But I think racing wise, it was probably one of my favorite races. I think with the new rules and the new pitting rules where you had to pit, like, I think, what was it, two or three times required to pit or something. And the tire compounds, I think they switched something around that during Qatar. But I think with all those new rules put into place for that race, it made it really interesting. And there was always something going on, which I loved. I think as a Mercedes fan, you're probably like, how did you like Qatar? Uh, the first lap crash was really intense. I threw my clip across the room. I was screaming. I probably woke up my whole building. It was definitely hard. But I think George's comeback from P18 to P4 was also incredible. And I think even though he could have gotten a podium and he didn't, seeing him literally go from P18 to P4 was just really cool to watch. And I think he had an incredible drive. So as a George fan, like that race itself was really good. Also, I love night races. Oscar looked sexy as fuck. Oscar sprint race winner. It was just all really, really good. There were so many positives to this race. I don't know. I think it was a really crazy race. Super eventful. I loved it. Yeah. Next on my list, I have Abu Dhabi. Honestly, Abu Dhabi wasn't even that cool, but the reasons I put for it was finally the season is over and 1663 podium because I love Charles, I love George. And then hilarious press conference. That was literally my reasons. Like, finally the season was over. It ended on a high. We got a George Russell podium, and the press conference was really funny with George like coughing like a sick Victorian child, and Charles and Max making fun of him. I mean, yeah, I don't know. The race itself was pretty good. I think the whole situation with Charles and Checo, that was really cool to watch. I think, yeah, it was just a good race. Next, we have Singapore. Now, I didn't really want to put Singapore on this list because honestly, I didn't like Singapore only because I'm a George Russell fan, and him DNFing on the last lap when he was going to get third actually caused me depression for a couple days afterwards. But objectively, it was a good race. And the reason why I put it on this list is because I think the vibes of Singapore were just really cool to watch. I think watching qualifying and free practice and knowing that Red Bull isn't up there, and for once it might not be a Red Bull podium, it might not be a Red Bull win, and I think it was super fun to almost be on your toes, like who's gonna get a win, who's gonna get a win, if it's not Red Bull, if it's not Max. And I think leading up to it, it was really intense and really cool, and I kind of missed that feeling during the season, so I think feeling that again was really fun. So I kind of like that. Also, the whole Liam Lawson masterclass was great to see. The fact that he literally outqualified both Checo and Max, that was crazy. I think the whole race was crazy, and I think it was really cool. So that was why it kind of made my list of honorable mention top races. Now for my least favorite race of the season, it has got to be Sao Paulo, the Brazil Grand Prix. Mm, Literally all of my favorite drivers DNF'd. It was so terrible. Like Alex DNF first lap. Charles didn't even make it past formation lap. George, I don't even know what's going on. Like George and Lewis were having a disaster class. The Mercedes strategy was awful. Everything was just going wrong. Ugh, it was so bad. Oscar was like getting lapped. It was terrible, terrible. Oh my god, it was just not fun. Yeah, not a fun race to watch. Also, Brazil, this really hurts for me because if you know, Brazil 100% was my favorite race of last season because A, it was George Russell's first win. Mercedes won too. Like it was such a good race and it was just such good vibes. So then to have Brazil be my least favorite race this season, it honestly hurts so bad. It was just so bad. I was so excited too. I was like, oh my god, we're back in Brazil. It's Mercedes territory. I'm so excited. And then it just got fucked. So now for my least favorite race honorable mentions, we have Australia, Canada, and Japan. Australia honestly was, I don't know if I'd say it was just as bad as Brazil, but like it was on the same level. It was bad for the same reasons, but like worse reasons. I don't know. Both of them were awful. Australia was so terrible. I was watching it at like 4 a.m., 3 a.m. I don't even remember. And the amount of red flags, the fact that that race went on for hours, it was terrible. And then the worst part was that George Russell was literally P1, overtook Max at the start. So amazing. And then DNF'd because of car problems. Oh my god, like I literally I still get mad about it thinking about it to this day. Like I can't. It's just like such a bad race, so bad, so bad. Also, Charles and Alex also DNF. So yet again, my favorites, all my faves DNF'd again. It was just so bad. I just don't know. Terrible race. Nothing good. Nothing good. The reason why I didn't like Canada mainly was just the fact that it was kind of boring. Like nothing really happened. It wasn't really eventful. But it was a pain in my ass as a George fan because he's P4, then he drops down to P19 because he has car problems, and then he goes up back to P8. He fights back through the field to get up to P8, and then DNFs. So it was just such an emotional roller coaster. It was, I just didn't like it. It was not the vibe. It wasn't. It wasn't. And now Japan. People are probably like, why did you not like Japan? Oscar got a podium. It was a McLaren double podium. What could have been wrong about Japan? Let me paint you a picture. Let me paint you a picture. So I just got off the plane. I'm studying abroad in the UK. I'm hopping off the jet. I'm in my accommodation in my flat, and literally the next morning, I am sitting in some fugly random guy's flat in his living room watching the F1 because he had Sky Sports and you got to do what you got to do. And me and my friends are sitting there watching it. It's so awkward. It's 6 a.m. I'm tired. I'm confused. Checo's DNFing and then getting back in the car and then driving again. Like, what is going on? It was confusing. It was weird. I was tired. I just didn't care. It was hard. It really was. I didn't really remember much. I mean, like experience wise, it wasn't a good experience, and it was just wild. Like, ooh, no, no. Now for my most iconic moment of the 2023 season, it has to go to the Max and George Baku moment. I'm here to fight. I'm here to win. I'm not just gonna wave him by because he's Max Verstappen in a Red Bull. Literally one of the most iconic George Russell quotes of all time. So amazing, iconic, snatched, slayed. It's flawless. Oh my god. And then Princess George, it was just such a like fever dream weekend, honestly. It was crazy. That whole incident was hilarious. I think it's funny though because Max gets mad at people who literally just do the same thing that he does all the time. Like he will get so mad at people and be like, "Oh my god, why would you do this?" Blah blah blah. You do the same exact thing, King. Sit down. Jesus Christ. Also, that weekend we got that quote from George, like "Ah, sugar," which is really funny. So I had to put that in there. But yeah, it was a funny moment. Now for my favorite quotes and radios of the 2023 season. There are some really good ones on here, so I'm about to read them out to you. Number one, I've got a car right up my ass. I think that one is honestly one of my favorites. It's so funny. It's so George also. So if you don't know, George said that one. It was so funny. Next, we have Thank You Mercedes. So that was during Qatar when Max told Oscar that George and Lewis like took each other out, and because Oscar was like, "Oh, what happened to the Mercedes? What happened to Lewis? What happened to George?" And Max was like, "Oh, they took each other out, like they crashed." And Oscar goes, "Oh, thank you, Mercedes." It was so funny, like so true, King, but like, damn, it was so good. Next, we have SD Bestie on the podium, baby. That was so funny in Monaco. I was shocked that he had said that. A lot of people hated on him for it, but I thought it was really funny. I thought it was hilarious. So yeah, I put that one on there. Next, we head straight to the nightclub. See you tomorrow or not. And that was Max in Vegas in like the little taxi ride that they had. And that was when like Charles was like, "Oh, where are we going? Are we going to the nightclub?" And Max was like, "Oh yeah, we go straight to the nightclub." It was so funny. I love when he does that. Like, see you tomorrow or not. It was just so funny. Ugh, I love that one. And then this one isn't really funny. Honestly, it's kind of sad as a George fan, but it kind of is funny when George was like, "I was forecasted a podium." Like, what are you, the weatherman? That was so funny to me. I mean, it's not really funny, but it kind of is. Because he was like, "How did we get this wrong? I was forecasted a podium." Yeah, and I was forecasted to be a billionaire, and here we are. We can't always get what we want, can we? This one was so good. And penalty for Mr. Russell. Thank you. I love that one. Oh my god. I mean, yeah, he ate with that. I'm a George fan, but he it was hilarious. That was Charles that said that one. That was really funny. And the funniest part about that in hindsight is the fact that Charles literally ended up getting disqualified that race. Oh, it's so good. This one is so funny also. Is Carlos blind or what? When Oscar was like, "Is Carlos blind or what?" That was so good. Oh my god. Honestly, everybody's shade and beef with Carlos impeding during free practices was so funny this season. Honestly, it wasn't really that funny because I got so pissed off. If there was one person that pissed me off during free practices and qualies, it was Carlos Sainz because he decided to impede like his life depended on it. And before anybody says, "Oh, but other people impeded," blah blah blah, Daniel Ricciardo literally said in an interview that like he was confused why Carlos was calling out other people on it because if every driver had to name someone or think of someone who did impeding or annoyed them with impeding, it would be Carlos. So yeah. And the last iconic quote that is honestly super duper duper iconic is Lewis, we know the car is bad. Please drive it. So real. That was so funny. I love Toto for that. Oh my god, like say speak your truth, King. So yeah. Lastly, on my F123 Wrapped, we have my favorite moments. So, first favorite moment of mine was Inspector George in Australia. If you guys don't remember, he after he DNF'd, he literally was standing and looking at the Red Bull car like this with his sunnies, like with his sunglasses and everything, and he looked so funny. His like foot leaned up against the wall during the red flags. It was so good. I was like, "Oh, you obviously learned something from Lewis." Yeah, that was so funny. I did like that one a lot. Then we have Austria and track limits. So if you guys remember the amount of track limit violations that were occurring in Austria, Jesus Christ, it was crazy. Nobody was safe. Nobody, except for maybe Max Verstappen. But yeah. Next favorite moment of the season was when Lando was leading the British Grand Prix because obviously, like, you guys know I'm not a Lando fan necessarily, but I think that that was just such an iconic moment. And just hearing the crowd's reaction and roars to Lando leading the British GP, goosebumps, chills. It was so cool, and I honestly wish I could have seen it live because I bet it was insane. It was just crazy. I think that was a crazy quote, especially like Lance Norris is leading the British Grand Prix. It was so crazy. I loved it so much. Yeah, it was super cool. Next favorite moment of the season is the Max Verstappen podcast. I think that that whole joke of it being the Max Verstappen podcast, the cool down room, was just really funny, and yeah, I liked that joke. It was cool. And then the Zandvoort 2019 rookies video, I loved that video. I think it was super funny. I was literally just rewatching it recently because I'm bored and they always make me feel better and bring me joy. Yeah, and I just always love that video that they do in Zandvoort, and yeah, it was good. My next favorite moment was the Vegas taxi ride. I think that like that was probably one of my favorite moments and things that happened in Vegas. It was so funny and random, and everybody was mad that they weren't going to have like the traditional cool down room. Honestly, the cool down car kind of delivered, and I would love to see the cool down car in some of the races. It just gave a lot more, all up in their face like in the car, and they're just kind of squeezed together. It was so funny. Like they did more talking in there than they ever do in the cool down room. It was funny. I liked it. And last but not least, I loved the whole Checo doing a Lewis in Mexico. When Lewis was watching in the cooldown room, he was watching like the beginning of the race when Checo literally squeezed Charles. Uh, and Lewis was like, what it, And Lewis was like, he just did a me in Qatar. And it was so funny. Like, so true. That's literally what I was thinking too. I was literally thinking that when I was watching the race. I was like, girl, you just pulled a Lewis. Oh my God. Yeah, I thought it was really funny. So I loved that moment during the season. Also, honorable mention, I really liked the whole 5 second penalty for Ocon. I think that whole joke was so funny this season. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of other moments that I loved this season that I missed. Uh, let me know what your favorite moments are. I'm super curious. You should like comment them or whatever. Your favorite moments of the 2023 F1 season. I bet there's a bunch of really good ones. These are just some of mine. And yeah, that's kind of my F1 23 wraps. Hopefully I'm gonna do this again next year. There's probably a lot more I could have added, but to be honest, I'm like super tired right now. So I probably could have talked in some more detail. But yeah, the 2023 season, while it could have been boring to some people and sometimes it was boring, I loved it. It was actually my first official like F1 season, start to finish, that I've watched the full thing because I got into F1 halfway through the season last year. So yeah, it's really cool. This was my first official like full season in F1 and I really loved it. I'm really excited for 2024 to see what it brings. And also I want to wish you guys all a very happy new year and I'm super excited to see you guys all in the new year. Hope you have great holidays, great new year. And if you guys do your F1 23 wrapped, I would love to see it. So make sure to tag me and let me know how yours goes because I totally would want to see it. And yeah, thanks for listening and see you in the next episode. Bye.